Okay. So now let me just see if there's anybody else there.
No.
Just hold on. There is one attendee,
Right.
Bernie, and there's several. But okay, nobody from the.
Yeah, I'm starting to stream in.
All right, Tony, you need a motion to open the meeting. You have a quorum.
All right, so can I get a motion to open the meeting, please?
I'll
Second.
make the motion. Dave Finch looks like he's trying to get in, guys.
Did he just, okay, he just came in, so let me,
Okay. I'll call you back. I'm in a meeting.
Oh, hey, Elsie, you made it.
Yes, thank
okay,
you.
so why has, there he is, he has made it. Hi,
Hi, Dave. You're muted.
Everything. There we go. All right, one step at a time. There we go. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, I'm all in gear.
Okay, so we have a motion. Can I get a second to open the meeting, please?
Second,
Second.
All in favor? Great,
Aye.
thank you. Motion, so the Village of Mamaroneck Flood Mitigation Advisory Committee, May 24th meeting is in progress. Thank you all for attending. Thanks, Dan, for being our trustee. So I guess I will start with should be 2A, just thank youing everybody, all of our, so thank you for the Army Corps meeting. So the mayor and the board of trustees, the village manager and admin, Emmeline LMCTV, Community Resource Center, and all of our electrical officials. Catherine Parker, Stephen Obis, there was a representative from Shelley Meyer's office, and anybody I missed, so I apologize. And particularly to our community members, because I really felt everyone, they were very respectful and it was great. And thank you to the Army Corps. So Peg, see, I did that first.
Well, that was my first thing, was sort of a recap of the Army Corps. So
Okay.
that's good. That's perfect.
So we'll go back to that. So
Okay.
the other thing is, before we get started, we do have 572 Van Ranst on. They asked that we postpone it. I feel that we can opine on some of the missing documents that we see, and a process for going from where we are to the next step. And then if we have more questions, we can invite them to the next meeting. So I think we will not affect their status
Right. I
by
think you're
not having them attend today. Okay.
Yep.
So after that Army Corps meeting, some people say, oh, you have an aha moment. Well, Gail walked around. Gail's my wife. When she walked around with me doing the flood marks with the Abatis and a couple of other people, she said, Tony, everybody has so much post-traumatic PSTCD or whatever that is, right? And
PTSD.
yeah, okay, thank you, Peg.
I've had it for 20 years, so I know.
So she said people are really upset, and she said it's almost like they're dejected, and we've heard this many times. So my takeaway after the Army Corps was that, and we'll go into their schedule, but they're not going to do anything fast, and we kind of know that. So I decided that emergency preparedness, which I know Andrew was on the committee the last time, I was a bit of a nut about emergency preparedness, and I really think that we have to make this our number one goal. And so I put a whole bunch of stuff on the agenda about emergency preparedness. I want to say, though, that I would like that we consider the way we do it to be fiscally, environmentally, and culturally responsible. And by that I mean, I think we need to find money for stuff that we need, and I think FEMA will help us. We've got lots of promises from the county and the state for that every time we speak to them, that we need to look at the environment as we do stuff and look at our cultural resources. So that's my preamble to that. And then I had two fundamental ideas. How can we help ourselves? That's number one, kind of individually and as groups and as blocks. And the second is, at the village level, and then maybe that kind of coordinates with county, state, and feds. So all of that said, I guess I'm thinking that I'd like to maybe have an in-person meeting, a kickoff kind of on that at St. Vito's. And I looked at a date, Dan. I didn't get a chance to ask you if it was available, but I'm looking at maybe June 3rd is a Thursday, that maybe we could have a kickoff meeting. Peggy's saying no.
I'm sorry, I can't be there. I'm getting my second booster, and I know I will not be feeling well. So you can do it without me, but I cannot be there.
All right, so Dan, see what's available, and we'll go from there. I won't make any commitments tonight.
Okay.
And then,
When you say what's available, what you mean, to have a meeting?
so Dan, I'm thinking that on emergency preparedness, kind of have a kickoff meeting with the community at the parish hall, the way you were able to get it for us the last two times. And, we would host it. It wouldn't be an official flood committee meeting, obviously. And, I'll dig out my folders from the last time I did this, the Red Cross stuff. And then I spoke briefly with Stephen yesterday, and, Stephen, you had the idea of doing the flood proofing. So maybe you could start to honcho that and see, okay, what would people need? What would the process be? And I don't know. And then, go bags, maybe sandbags. The village had said they could do that. Could we get maybe block captains? I don't know. I want to go full steam ahead on
Tony, is that
protecting
enough
us.
time? Tony, is that enough?
I don't think it is. That's the same thought I'm having, Andrew.
What are you
For
saying,
June
Andrew?
3rd? Is that enough time to really prepare, to give
On
notice
our
to the
part.
community? We have Memorial Day coming up this weekend, so the 3rd would be next week. I don't know if that's enough time. If we
Okay,
really
I'm
wanna-
hearing two of you say, so let's.
No, I
let's-
mean, I'm just referring to the group, but I think if we want to do this right, which I completely agree, that again, this is a low hanging fruit. What's the investment other than our time and attention to something that's so important? I think that let's do it right.
Okay, so
Totally agree.
If I may make a suggestion?
hang on, Dave. Let me get Dave. Dave, go ahead.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just so I understand totally, and stepping back a bit. We know that none of us own shovels big enough to do anything about the Army Corps project. The Army Corps project has its own momentum, its own timing. We can tweak it, we can do this and that. In the meantime, this is going to happen again. And to guarantee that it's not going to happen before they are wound up and have the ribbon cutting and be finished is for sure. So it's a matter with the community. Okay, we're going to have another emergency. Everything else is on track, but we're going to have another emergency. And what we can do is we can make sure we're ready for it. I mean, that's what you're saying, right?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
And I think that's the message. And so it's a matter of what is it that we have to do? And I don't think we're going to get it done in 10 days. But it's
Okay.
still the same goal.
And one of the other things that I'd like to suggest we put into this mix, and it came up after the storm, people asked us, and we did relate it to the village, but we never got an answer. Where designated areas of people should be parking their cars? And I think, it seems like a small thing, but it's not when you lose your car. We should certainly have that piece of information along with other things well organized before we go to the community.
So Tony, if I can make a suggestion, maybe we can, each of us, or if you want to have a subcommittee of FMAC, itemize it, boom, 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 boom. That way we can address this and we can approach it with, in a
Divide up tasks and make sure we're organized before
Exactly.
we go to the public.
Right.
Well,
I
what
think
I-
that the-
share
I
our
think that the
thoughts.
will-
and then invite the public for
And do
additional.
we have to reinvent the wheel?
No, but we have to make sure we have spokes in the wheel.
No, but we have to reinvent it. Right, exactly. But is somebody else already done this? Can we go someplace and says,
Not all of it. We have to piece together years worth of discussions.
Fine.
I spoke to the village about the parking spots, and they said they didn't have anything on record.
Well,
then-
there
They
is
said
there is
the
confusion on a
spots
lot
that
of,
they had are in the float zone, so they can start assigning that. So maybe that's a good way to start. To
That's
start
something
right
we
there.
need to start working on. You know, there are going to be different levels of this. Some is going to be the village responses, some is going to be us, some is going to be something
Right.
else.
Community participation, cooperation, right?
Dan, I cut you off before. What was it?
okay, so there are two things. I think the idea is very good. I think going into subcommittees and outlining your various approaches, I think is excellent. The village staff has already started a emergency response approach. And I think it would, once everybody gets everything together here, I think try and get the village involved and make sure that we're coordinated with that, and then hold a meeting that would be much more meaningful, you know, for the public to get their ideas and input and say, here's what we've come up with, and give them a sheet that outlines it so that they have, you know, that they can help crystallize their comments and constructive approaches. I think that would be more beneficial to you all.
Dan, who's working on it at the village level? Do you know?
Yeah, Jerry and Dan are coordinating.
Yeah, another thing
In
is,
terms of the parking, Elsa, there is a non-official approach that gets re-upped at each time, that people can park, you know, when there is an announcement of flooding at village lots between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. And we're trying to change that to a more desirable times in terms of getting there earlier, you know, rather than later, you know, like, you know, saying around 6 o'clock, or if there is a threat that it's coming down, you know, in the middle of the afternoon or the morning, you know, to do it then, you know, it just, you know, it's all about time. Just simply saying 8 to 8 doesn't, I don't think really is the most appropriate approach to this.
Dan, has
Yeah.
anybody approached the MTA? Because that's, God knows, high ground, the MTA parking lot.
Which
the MTA parking lot isn't high ground. I
got
got flooded out there
On top?
on the bottom.
No, I'm talking the top one.
Oh, okay.
Not the village. parking lot.
I don't know, but that's a good approach to follow up on. That's a very good suggestion, Peggy.
One thing I also want to mention is
I
that,
think, Tony, it would be wise if you could you know, if people could take on an assignment and bring it to, you know, at your back, you know, and share it with everybody. And then, you know, you can fine tune it and set up a meeting with the village. And I think the village staff would be very receptive to meeting and being, you know, help on this.
All right.
one thing I do want to also mention is that some of these things might not be just us. Like if we, for instance, if we were to get the, you know, the coastal people, because obviously this coastal floods and they probably have a lot more knowledge of that than we do. So we might want to have some kind of, if anybody knows anybody from that committee, we might want to reach out to them and make it kind of a joint thing to a certain extent.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And I went to a FEMA coastal flooding seminar probably 7 years ago. All right, so before we can, I want to continue, but Catherine, I want to just welcome Catherine Parker, our county legislator. Thank you, Catherine, for joining. And you missed, I thanked all of our officials for attending with the Army Corps the other night. I did mention you by name. I know sometimes I do forget, but I
No
remembered
worries.
today, probably just
No
because you
worries.
just, and we're talking about focusing on emergency preparedness. And, you know, obviously we're looking for your support, which I'm sure you'll give us to the best of your ability.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Tony, before we move on to the next, can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, I'm not moving on yet, Peg.
Okay, maybe we should get a list together amongst the committee members and we can each put our thoughts down and share them and get a running email going back and forth before we break into committees, and then we can divide up the committees based on what we see we're getting.
Okay, that sounds, so if everybody agrees, send me individually, Dave, I'll get to you in a minute. Send me a list, don't CC everybody so we don't break open meetings law. I'll put, I'll try to categorize stuff and send it back out. Dave?
One thing I can see us having is focusing eventually on having a website where all of this is available as a source of information. And it's going to have every category. That's where probably going to be going. I suggest we don't wait until we put everything together a month, 2 months, 3 months from now to have someone put the website in place. So we can start feeding up the really low hanging fruit, like the contents of a go bag, which we can probably steal somewhere, et cetera, et cetera. And so it starts being built from the beginning instead of waiting until we've had meetings and gotten things together. Just have starting, I just suggest that.
But Dave, shouldn't it be on the village's website under?
I assume so. I wasn't saying where, when, or how the website would be. Yep.
Yeah, and even as an interim, if we want, we could probably just use links to other government agencies that have that type of stuff. Like when I was just like looking into certain flood mitigation things, even like from a personal point of view, what people can do. There was like websites that we could just suggest, as kind of an interim thing.
So can you throw that into the memo work, the master thing we're putting together as the group? See what links you can find.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so.
But I think that resource should be up as skinny as slight as it might be, so we can start saying there is a website. It is being built. It is a source of information. Everything you need to know about storm preparedness.
Okay, all right, so I'm gonna be my usual self and still say I would like to have a meeting in 3 weeks, but Dan, because I know I've got a whole bunch of information that's already pretty much ready to go, and I think I even have some of it in bilingually. So today's the 24th. So, how about the 16th?
Yeah, I'm out of
Just-
town again on the 16th. If it could be.
Wait, Tony, just so we can understand, this is for the meeting with every meeting we have involves the community, but this will be spearheading just in terms of preparedness, ultimately, hopefully leading up to another presentation like we did several years ago, which was very successful the first time we did it, where the engineer actually spoke about just prudent development, what you can do on your own home. Private home.
It'll be like a kickoff meeting, Andrew.
Okay.
We'll have,
This
because
is
I know
separate
from
apart from our own flood mitigation advisor with an agenda, blah,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anybody else on this topic? Elsa, you look quizzical there.
Oh, well, I have to look at my calendar because I have many
We're gonna have
many
to put,
meetings in June.
okay.
So-
Right, take a look. You don't have to look now.
Yeah,
Okay.
Say the
maybe Tony.
16th?
Yeah, Tony, maybe you even want to do a couple of days and then we kind of say
Right.
which ones we can make and which ones we can't. And this way we could kind of, just pick the best one out of that.
Right.
Right. So Elsa, right now, the 16th is a Thursday. So just when you get a minute, look at your calendar on that
Just
one. Let's
don't
see
pick the 15th. 3 of us on this video won't be available. So
where are you going?
we'll be at the
League of
town
Women
center.
Voters has a little bit of a party going on.
Lou, Dan, and I have a mixer to go to.
Tony, apparently there's some questions you might want to just, if we're going to announce that we're going to do questions at the end, or if you want to take them, but people do have their hands raised, so you'll know.
All right, Dan, how about 2 questions and then we'll move on?
Okay, there are 2 hands, so we'll allow 1 short question to each. So Bernie, you're up.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. How are you?
Hey, Bernie.
I don't have just one question, and I'm definitely not going off topic because we're talking about emergencies here. So this is an emergency, number one. Number two is I got cut off at the ACE meeting with this only one question, which was not right. But here's I have some questions and I have a lot to say. Okay. Is everyone getting on my damn bandwagon? It seems that it's not happening.
So
Okay?
Dan, so Bernie.
Yes. No, but let me speak first, Tony, please. Okay. I sat there, listened to the ACE for 2 hours, tell me that this thing is not even starting for 2 years. Okay. I asked the guy where he studied. Why didn't he study the reservoir? Why did he study the upper river and the watershed? He gave me a zero answer, no answer. Okay. I spoke with Dave Zavicki from the county, and Dave told me that the Army Corps did ask for the study for the reservoir, and they did study it. So that means to me that they looked at the reservoir for about a second. Okay. And whoever was in charge in the county, and I hope Kathy's listening to me, Kathy Parker. Okay,
I'm
whoever
listening.
whoever was in the county at that time brushed the reservoir off. So they brushed it off. Okay. So now I sit there for 2 hours. They're telling me that they're only going to lower the water by 4 feet. And this study is from 2007. Not from 2021, not from this last flood, which was 2 feet higher than the last flood in 2007. They're telling me that there's only going to be 80% of effectiveness in this plan that they're going to do 2 years from now, 2.5 years from now. Okay. And I hate to say it, but I'm in the 20%. Okay. So I will keep getting flooded again and again after this study. Okay. So that's why I am on the bandwagon for the dam. Okay. And all of you need to get on the bandwagon for the dam because they passed $94,000 to clean it up last night. And to have a study for the engineers to study it and have the hydrologist, if they need be, to study this dam and to study this reservoir. Because if we don't, I got news for everyone. Okay. And I'm not calling myself Christopher Columbus. But when Columbus said the world was round, everybody laughed at him. Okay. And I'm going to say it over and over again. If we don't fix that dam and that reservoir, if we don't raise the dam with working gates, with working gate valves that could control the water, everyone on this committee, everyone here tonight is going to get flooded again. Okay. And the Army Corps of Engineers isn't going to do anything. It's not going to do anything because the water from the county, Kathy Parker, the water from the county is too much to flow through Mamaroneck. It's way too much. Okay. I spoke to Steve Otis, the Army Corps night. I spoke with him. He gave me his card. I had to email him. I emailed him and I asked him about the Environmental Bond Act, which is $250 million up for vote next year, this November, up for vote. Okay. And Mamaroneck needs to get on the ball. And I've been telling this to Tom Murphy, and Dan heard me last night. Get on the ball with this Environmental Bond Act and get on the list for a new dam. Okay. None of this clean up the dam. None of this fix the spillway. None of that's going to work. It's only going to work if we build a new higher dam. They built and then they fixed the bridge over Mamaroneck Avenue. God knows, did the ACE approve this bridge over the reservoir there?
So
Because
Bernie,
now that bridge might be too low.
Bernie,
But see, everything's backwards. I had to
Bernie.
scream and yell. I had to scream and yell at,
Bernie.
at a board meeting. Excuse me, Tony. I had to
no,
scream and yell at a
Bernie,
board meeting
Bernie, no,
to tell
excuse
everybody
me.
about the
Bernie,
about the post road bridge being
Bernie,
enclosed with concrete, and nobody knew about it. No one.
Bernie.
Go ahead. I want
I
answers
said-
tonight.
hang
I
on,
want
no,
answers.
no,
I don't want you to
absolute-
give me the
No,
dumbfounded
Bernie,
look
no.
like you did at
No.
the meeting at St. Vito's. I'm trying to play nice with everyone.
Hey,
I
Bernie.
got the dumbfounded look with everyone. I asked a question, and when I said something, you just go like this. You look at me. I said, "How about it with this moratorium thing? All this moratorium is a roundabout way to get affordable housing. We don't want that. We want means. We want laws. If somebody builds in Mamaroneck, they have to have a water retention system on their building. They got to build a flat roof building, and they got to hold the water on their roof for 3 hours. That's how the city does theirs.
Okay,
It's New
Bernie.
York City, and you know it, Tony. And these are the laws
Bernie,
that you
Bernie,
guys
Bernie.
you guys
Tony,
are
hold on a
the
second.
flood
Bernie.
mitigation.
Bernie, it's Andrew. Do me a favor.
Yes.
Take a deep breath a second. We went through this routine a couple weeks
Because-
ago.
I know
We hear-
because
listen,
because
Bernie,
what
Bernie,
happens is
listen, Bernie.
I want to sit back and ask the question.
Bernie,
and no,
take a
and so
deep breath a
everybody
second.
says one question. I have a million, and it keeps piling up and piling up.
You know what? But here's the good news. The group of individuals that are sitting right here are hearing you. We need to work together. And what Tony's trying to reiterate, and what anybody else on this committee is going to reiterate, your points are taken.
No, they're
they
not,
mean
Andrew,
something.
because I
But
because
Bernie,
I
Bernie, listen.
because
hold
I
on a
say
second.
it.
Take a deep breath.
Say it. Hold on.
Bernie.
I say it.
Take a deep, Bernie, give us a second.
I say it, and everybody looks at me like I got 10 heads.
You know what, Bernie? But what happens is when you yell, we lose the significance of what you're saying. You're making good points, but let us take those points and go forward. You've got a legislator, Catherine Parker's on the phone. You got 2 trustees available. You got the chair of the committee. We're hearing you. And you've got 4 other individuals here that are taking their time out just for this very reason. So you can be heard and we can take this a step further. We've all been impacted, Bern. We hear you. But by shouting, yelling, that's not going to help. What we need to do is we're listening, we're hearing, and we're going to go take it a step further. So you're making good points, but let's just take it down a notch. And rather than yelling at each other, let's see what we can do. You've got, again, Catherine's on the phone, Dan and Lou are on the phone, Tony, the chair. So let's take it just one step at a time. You're bringing up good points, so let's address it one step at a time. Okay, that's all I'm asking. Bernie.
Let me rebut
That's all I'm
this,
asking,
Andrew.
Bernie.
Let me rebut this because listen, no offense to you guys. No offense to you guys. Okay. I say the damn, I say the damn, you guys talk about $5 stoppers at Home Depot. That's what you guys talk about.
That's just a low hanging
Okay,
fruit, Bernie.
okay.
Low hanging fruit, Bernie.
I say, let's go. Look, stop, Andrew, stoppers are not going to stop the flood at
But
my
you know
house.
what?
When
But
the
for some,
water
it
comes,
will,
when the
Bernie. But
water
for
comes to the
some,
first
for you-
floor, it's not going to stop.
But Bernie, but for
listen,
some it will. Stephen, who actually brought that up, we all agreed that is a low hanging fruit. For some people, that might make a difference. That's not going to resolve the dam issue. You're right. But for some individuals, a low hanging fruit object like that.
Okay.
will. So
Okay,
let's move on to, okay, so that's the
that's
$5
fair enough.
stuff.
That's fair enough. But when
Okay.
you talk about $5 stoppers for an hour, and I sit on the phone and I wait for my turn because I want to play nice with you people, okay? And I don't get called upon, there's a little bit of a problem there, Andrew. So that's why there's the volume from me and there's the talking over and trying to get my point in. If you let me get my point in and you let me do it and you don't interrupt me and you don't start saying this one question thing, because I got pissed off at the ACE meeting and I wanted to play nice because I was on the phone. I called Tom Murphy because of all of this nonsense on Facebook about the one question. And I got mad and I instant messaged him. He called me back and I said, Tom, I do not want to do this on Facebook. And he appreciated the fact I didn't want to do it on Facebook. And I said, I'm going to play nice at the meeting, but he better stand by me Dan Netches is on the board. You better stand by me when I want to, when this dam comes up. All these trustees that are up for vote, okay? I want them all on the record. I'm going to ask the questions because I'm going to come to all the primaries and everything. And I'm going to
Bernie,
ask the
yes.
questions. I'm going to ask the question.
Bernie,
and the
threats
question
aren't
is
going to do anything, Bernie.
It's
You
not
shouldn't
a
be
threat.
threatening the politics. That was a threat.
It's
Don't
not
threat.
a
Bernie, what do you
threat.
want to know?
I'm
What
gonna
do you want to
ask-
know?
I'm going to ask, what are you going to do if the dam comes up and they want to build the new dam? Are you going to say yes to it? Are you going to support the dam project, or are you not going to support the dam project?
If we
Okay,
determine,
because if it comes up,
Can I-
if
may I
it
answer you?
determines,
Bernie, let the man speak.
May I
Let
Go
the
answer
man
ahead.
speak.
may I answer you? If we
Yes.
determine that the dam helps with flooding, and that's the part, Bernie, that you're missing, that we're not sure that it does. I know that it seems like it does to a lot of people, but if we determine that the dam is a viable flood control device, then I will move hell and high water to take control of it and make it a flood control device. That's
Okay.
me. Okay.
Okay.
So that's the answer you have from me.
that's what I want to hear. I don't want to hear
Bernie,
this.
Bernie,
I don't want
if
to
I
hear this
may.
runaround stuff. I said last night at the board, I
Bernie.
said, no more politics. No more politics. No
Listen,
fighting.
listen,
No fighting
Bernie,
with the mayor.
Bernie,
No fighting. Whoever
What we
gets
have
in the
not,
way.
Bernie,
whoever
Bernie, what
gets
we
in the
have,
way.
Bernie,
let
Bernie,
Dan
Bernie,
has
listen.
has a view on this, but I mean, we have to figure out if the dam helps or
Yes.
not.
Okay,
I know
so
it-
we've
And
been,
that
we've
is
been,
a process.
Bernie, enough. We have been asking for, and we had a very lengthy discussion about this last night. The issue is we have not had a hydrologist report or study that really talks about how effective or ineffective the dam will be. And we all want something that's effective. And if it isn't effective, then it shouldn't be.
Okay, that's fair
But
enough.
we don't know. Let me finish, Bernie.
Go ahead.
Everyone.
We
I'm
do
listening.
not have that information. All of the studies that have been done have not really looked at the long-term hydrological impact, pro or con, to this. What has been, the studies that have been done, if you, and I know you've read them, one of the few people who probably have, I've read them. The fact is that they have done it as a static point in time, having nothing to do with any type of real flood control, one way or the other, without taking into account, what the hydrology is, including what happens in the downstream. And the downstream includes the heights, as well as the flats, as well as everything in between. And that has not been looked at, and that is an integral part of what has been done. What the Corps did, just for your information, they did a study when they did a study, and they concluded that the dam only would be effective in 1 to 2 inches of rain. That doesn't answer any question whatsoever, because if you drain it down, you can get more. The questions are, what really is the impact of a controlled approach to flood control? And you can hire all the engineers in the world that are structural engineers, and they're going to tell you whether the dam is safe, not safe, what you need to do to repair it, what you need to do to take it down, make it higher, put in gates, whatever. That's not the real issue. The real issue, as you know, is, does it help? You get done with all this, is it meaningful? And that's what we want. If it's meaningful, we all want to do it. And if it's not meaningful, we don't want to do it. And that's really the crux of it. And I think you
Okay.
have to agree with that.
Okay,
right?
yes, I totally agree with you. Jerry sent me the email for the proposal for what they're going to do with the dam. And I have to be honest with you. It was sent to me at like 7 o'clock last night. I didn't get a chance, but I saw
It
some
does not
things on there.
address the issue. The
Yes, it does.
proposal that was
It
sent
says
does not address that issue.
it says it's gonna study for the long term of it. First of all, I read that, and the second thing is Army Corps of Engineers did not study the system, Dan. Okay, the system is in place. The dam and
I
the
understand.
reservoir, it's in place. Put the dam higher. Of course, the dam that's there now doesn't work because it never worked since they installed it in 1928. It never worked. Okay, look at all the flood records. The ACE has it on their study. It's been flooding before this dam was there and after. Do you know why? Because the dam wasn't high enough. It was not built high enough. Okay. Listen, I've said this before. I tried to iterate this at St. Vito's, but listen, I couldn't say it. I fly fish all the time and I see these dams. I go on all these rivers in New York State and they control the river with a dam and a reservoir.
You are exactly right.
Okay.
And
So-
that
so
is not
when we-
in the proposal. That is part of the problem. What
No, it is. They
It
said
is-
they're going to
no,
get a
it is not.
hydrology. Okay,
Folks,
so then that
Dan,
has to be in the
It is,
proposal then.
and that is
Dan,
part of
Bernie,
the issue, and that is what
folks.
has to be, excuse the expression, flushed out in a meaningful form of scope. And that's what we are planning to do. Okay?
Okay, so there.
And with that, with all due respect, because you are one of the few people who have taken the time, not only because you're concerned, but you've taken the time to do your homework on it. And I really admire that because most people just react. And you have taken the time to really understand the issue, and you know the issue. And that's what we need to study. It is not just what the dam, as the dam, it is as a flood control a flood control portion of of the flooding issue for the system, which goes much further than just, right at the dam and putting it higher or lower. It has to do with what the flows in and what the flows out and what can get out through the bottleneck.
Chair
Yes.
That's what we need to
Yes,
do.
Bernie.
Listen, Bernie,
So we're going to
Dan
move
and I
on,
don't
Bernie.
agree on
Just
a lot
Lou,
of things.
Lou,
We agree
just a
about
minute.
this.
We're-
You gotta let
we're
these
gonna-
folks move
Lou,
on.
I can't
Lou,
hear this.
You gotta let
Everybody's
these
talking
folks move
over each
on.
other.
Lou,
What, move on? That's an important point, Lou. Come on. You guys, that's
Okay.
important.
Look,
Bernie,
This is my gripe with
Bernie,
you guys.
you've
See,
had
it's just
your
pushing
time.
off.
We, with all due respect, there are other people, that want to do this, and we have a long agenda, and nobody is discounting anything you've said. And we really respect where you're coming from. So please don't, you want to work with us.
But yes, I do want to work with you because you guys
Okay.
have the ability to call a Dave Zavicka and you have the ability to call Kathy Parker personally. Okay. I have to go through this email thing. Like I have to do the email thing with you guys. And that's another thing. That's very frustrating. Okay. I emailed everyone with all of this, with a big long email. And Dan was the only one that answered me. And I talked to Andrew Spatz. He gave me his personal email. Okay. I send it through the Village of Mamaroneck email. And that's another frustrating thing, Andrew, because when I send my points out and there's no response, that's very frustrating. It's frustrating.
I can understand that. So here, you have something.
And I have to,
Bernie, do you have something to write with?
Yeah.
Do you have something to write with?
Yes, go ahead.
914.
Go ahead.
381.
381.
1234.
Oh, is that a fake number?
No, that's my cell. And you
Okay.
can call me anytime and I'm happy to talk to you, but we really need to move on with the program.
Yes, that's fine. But listen. And I sent an email last time when I was screamed and yelling. I apologize to everyone. And I'm apologizing for getting so loud and so ambitious. But it's just when I get to this point and they're trying to hold me back, please don't hold me back.
Bernie, the
Because-
ambition is amazing. It's
Yes.
genuine. Bernie, the ambition is absolutely essential and we love it. But it's when we start shouting, that's when people turn off and they go the other direction. I think, again, everyone agrees your points are absolutely valid. They're important to address and they will be addressed, but these things do take time. So
Yes.
it's not being dismissed at all.
Yes.
But we have,
Oh.
you know,
Before I leave, I would much rather email you and get a response. It's just a lot easier than doing the way I'm doing it. But the squeaky wheel gets the grease sometimes. So I apologize for getting loud for everyone. And I understand you guys are all trying to help. I get that. But some things cannot wait any longer. This is an emergency. This dam is an emergency. The cleaning out of the rivers. Listen, I have to commend Lou Young. He came up with this emergency program with Jerry. I have to say, listen, that's a good thing to go in there and dredge the rivers. I understand everybody's trying to do good. Dan is trying to do good. But when this dam comes, we better all get behind this dam and we better all charge. We better be like the Green Bay Packers and do the pulling guard, okay? And we get the first downs that way, okay? So when it comes up, when the money's there, when Steve Otis has the Environmental Bond Act, we better act on it. That's why I said to Tom last night, I said, are we going to sit around and wait for this, or we're going to bug him for the money now so he knows that we want this money for the dam, for a new dam.
listen,
if it comes
Coach
up that
Lombardi,
way.
we
Yes,
agree.
I am.
We agree with you, Coach Lombardi.
Yes.
We're ready. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Tony.
Thank you for your time. And I know you guys are doing good. So don't take it the wrong way, but just
Thank you, Bernie. Okay.
answer
we're-
your
we're
email.
moving- we're
Have a good
moving
night.
on.
Good night.
Moving on. Thank you. We're going to go
Rita,
to.
what's next?
One more
go back
question,
to- We're
Dan.
going to go back to the agenda.
Hey,
Okay.
Chair, if I can, I just need to intercept a second. At 8 o'clock, unfortunately, I need to, do we still have a quorum if I step away at 8 o'clock?
Yeah, I mean, if you have to, you have to. All right. With that in mind, Dan, before we leave this issue, can you just summarize what the Board of Trustees agreed to last night?
Last night, what we agreed to do was to do answer three of the DEC complaints, I guess, the citations, if you will, that are addressed to the Westchester Joint Waterworks as well as the Village of Mamaroneck. One of them is the action plan, and then there are two others planks that are being done.
Okay.
Was what was decided last night. There are other decisions that have been made that are being flushed out. Again, no pun intended, but we're not in a position to really, we don't have that information yet, but we are trying. We have all agreed that we do need a meaningful study.
Okay. All right. So
that
you're
is
basically,
going forward.
you're starting to look at the DEC complaints and you all agree you need a meaningful study. Okay, great. All right.
But just to be clear, you have not yet hired the consultant that we have read the proposal from. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Well, that's not correct. We've hired them for those three complaints. Okay,
And not to do the hydrology.
the hydrology, that's not part of it.
Okay.
Again, it is a scope of work that has not yet been completed.
All right, I just wanted to be clear. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Sorry, Dan, can you
Okay.
just tell us what the three complaints were?
Say again?
What
three
were the three
complaints.
complaints?
I don't have the three in front of me. The first was an emergency action plan. Second was a maintenance plan, and I don't remember the third. They all have to do with immediacy actions. Okay,
So is that on the dam or for other things?
Just the dam.
this all has to do with the dam.
Oh,
This is
okay.
this is just the dam, Steve.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So Maria, you're on. If you want to unmute yourself.
So hang on a second, Maria. I have to go get through something with Andrew before you got on. We will put you on in a few minutes, okay? I
Perfectly
apologize.
fine, Tony. No worries.
Okay. All right. We need to go to item 3, right? So the FMAC had asked in the fall to be able to opine on any developments in the floodplain, right? Dan and the Board of Trustees and the mayor agreed to give us that permission. It's a non-regulatory position that we're in. It's kind of like a volunteer committee having its say, okay? And so this is the first one, is 572 Ranst. I did not allow Kristen Motel to come tonight because what I want to go through is simple documents that might be missing. And I want to thank Peggy and Stephen. They worked out a basic checklist, which we're going to start to use. And then, and so before Andrew leaves, I'd like to do two things. One is, Peggy and Stephen, can you just, I wanted to go what documents you think are missing. And then the second is, Dan, I want to make sure that we're all in sync on what that, I will write an email summarizing what is missing, and then who do we send that document to, right? And then
Okay, so-
if we have substance questions about the project itself, we will invite Motel and Company back at a further meeting. But for tonight, the checklist, and then what?
Very easy. It's very easy. Nothing on the checklist was provided
Well,
Okay.
let me go
in the
back up for a
packet
minute.
that we originally received.
Pecky, just wait. Tony, can you hear
Yes.
me?
Yes.
Okay. I think you first, as a committee, need to adopt that, the checklist is
Okay.
that of what you're looking for. And
I
then,
sent it around to everyone on the committee, so everybody should have had a look at it by now. Did they?
Okay, so question number one is this basic checklist. Are people in agreement that we can use this as a starting point? Peggy, obviously you, Steve, yes.
David, thumbs up. Andrew?
Yeah, we don't really, it's not a formal meet. If it's not so, and Dan, I think what we could say is that we're going to use it as a draft preliminary checklist as a try, right?
It can always be
I
amended.
understand, but
Judge.
in order to send it to the planning department and building department, if there has to be, the committee has to say, this is what we'd like to have. Does that work with you? And if not, what needs to be changed?
Also, before we go forward, you were okay with it, right? Can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry. I think it's a very comprehensive list. It's my only concern is who is going to be in charge of making that all these things
Marshalling it.
get
Well, also what the process would be, the committee has to decide if this is what they would like to have as an outline. You then we send it through the village manager to the planning and building departments. This is what we would like to have when you get applications, and you're forwarding it, to the flood committee. This is what the flood committee is looking to see. And if that either works or it doesn't work. If it works, fine. And if it doesn't work, tell us what doesn't work and why, and what can we do to modify it.
Can I ask a very
That's
simple
a simple way of doing it.
question?
Yeah,
Have
I
we-
think I agree with it. I think it's very comprehensive. I think that Steve and Peggy put a lot of work into it, and it's really appreciated.
Can I just ask a simple question? Have we spoken to the various land use boards and committees and commissions in terms of how receptive they will be to the comments that we are going to embark upon and share?
That's a good question.
The land use committees are aware of it. I don't think anybody from this committee has talked with them.
Well, again, because Peggy and Stephen have worked diligently to arrive at this great list and items, and much like Elsa was conveying, we're gonna review this, we're gonna work, but once that product gets forward, is it just gonna sit somewhere, or is it actually gonna be incorporated, or,
But
just
if I understand it, not as a member of the committee, there's nothing on there that they're not required to file.
No, my point is that so on a monthly basis, we normally meet once a month. And as you can see, our agendas are very packed. It can be emotional, it can be sometimes. The point is, if we're going to spend that time that we have together opining on these projects, and then we're going to forward that information to the various land use boards and commissions, are they actually going to utilize that? Or is it sort of thanks, but we really don't need it?
Well, it's public information. They were taught, the whole point was that when the land use board receives an application, it was to be forwarded, to the flood committee if it's in a flood zone, period. That was the directive. You as a body acting in no different capacity than an individual, can make comments back to the board, and the board will evaluate those comments like they do anything else. So my suggestion is that if, to try and work with them and work with village staff, and you build that up as you go ahead. I don't think there's any approach to a negative approach for information and suggestions and questions. I mean, that's what the board is there for, not just to opine, to gather information and then make an informed decision. So if there is a question about a particular project that the committee is concerned about, you should be expressing it.
So
saying
Dan,
is-
let me just jump in on this, because to me, this document could be very simple. That if as we examine an application, I don't want to say review, but examine for the proper contents, this checklist can say, I'm just going to take Peggy's and C's first point, county stream permit, not included. Is it required, right? If it's required, then then maybe I can, if Jerry and get his staff to agree, then they check off, yes, it's required. If it's required,
These are
Go
all
ahead.
requirements per the building department.
That's what I understood.
This is all required. This isn't optional.
Right.
The problem has been that we have allowed building to be done in the floodplain without meeting these requirements.
okay, so Peg, I'll rephrase my statement. So we'll say then that the items checked below are not included in the application, and we believe they
And we
need to be
strongly
by
recommend they be included.
right, and that's all we have to say, and then
Right.
it's
And
on the
going on
record.
record too. For
It's
the
on the
future.
record, and we send it. Yeah. Okay. So Andrew, I mean, I'm not saying we can't go further in the future, but this is a simple starting point.
Gotta
But I
start
just
somewhere.
wanted to know what the reception was going to be from the various boards and
But
committees. when
Andrew,
they-
honestly, I don't care if it's. I mean, really, if it's a required document, it's like when the cop stops you. Do you have a driver's license or you don't? You can argue until you're blue in the face. You don't have a driver's license. You got to be pulled over, and that's it. You don't go anyplace. To me, this is the same thing, right? It should be. If you don't have the stream permit and you need it, the application stops. End of story. That's what we want.
No,
Yeah,
just a minute. I was with it all up until the application stops. If they don't have it, have they applied for it? And that no action should be taken until they get it.
Right, no planning should be
Yeah, that-
authorized
that
until all of these
doesn't- that-
documents.
that
are
doesn't mean-
provided.
That you're suggesting that a land use board can exercise its responsibilities to investigate every aspect of it as well. So I think what you're trying to do is you have a checklist of only certain items in their long list of documents that they have to supply. And these are the documents that you are most interested in for the flood, so.
Pertaining to flooding.
So if they have them, please provide them. If they don't, please provide that they're not, that you don't have them. And you can opine on saying, without this, you can't really evaluate it, or you can, but you can't make a final decision until you get X, Y, and Z. That's what I would suggest.
Because there's basically
In my
there's
opinion-
basically three different things. One is that they have it and they didn't give it to us. Two is they don't have it, and three is they did have it and give it to us. So those are the three possibilities.
Right. And in my opinion, this is just a guideline. We can present to them. They can take it or not take it or modify it, but it's our responsibility to to give it to them.
Now,
Okay,
while we're on this topic, Dan, we've seen one application. I am sure that there are other projects in the floodplain that we have not seen anything on.
Mm.
Yeah, I
And I
think we
can
actually,
tell you Madison Street is one of them.
yeah, I think we talked about this and I think
We
maybe,
talked about this last month and
Yeah.
we're not getting anywhere because nothing
I
is being sent to us.
yeah, I think Tony, you mentioned that maybe you have tried to have a meeting with the building department.
well,
Maybe-
I'm gonna, so, all right, so let's summarize this. I'm gonna, so Dan, I think that what I should do is send you an email just because of how the process is supposed to work between committees and the village manager. Send you an email requesting that you forward this to the village manager with, and in it, I'm going to say attaches the checklist. We would like the building department, your staff to review it,
And the planning department.
staff and planning. How about this? I'm going to send a draft letter around to everybody. You guys send me your comments back.
Wait, Tony,
But
don't we
Dan-
have someone from the building department on? I thought we were going to have someone from the building
They,
department
they
on.
said that they can't for another couple of months.
No, that was the manager's office.
Wait, who,
Yes.
what?
There was
It,
a manager's
right,
office.
right now, the building department is short-staffed. And I'm not sure that that they can get to the various meetings that, a while.
It was nice to have the
And
president.
there is a transition that is going on. And the village manager is actually moving to the building department to help facilitate its moving forward.
All right, I'm going to send the
So
draft
in the
letter.
meantime, if I may, Tony, couple of different things. Yes, send this document around to everyone so that they can weigh in and say they will be happy to work with us with this document. Secondly, I think we should ask specifically, where are all these other projects?
Yes, I agree. That'll be in the same email, Peg.
Okay,
And I'm going to send it around at least to, I'll send the letter first to you guys
okay.
and women, and then you can send it back to me this way if I miss something, and then I'll send it to Dan, and Dan will send it off to Jerry, because I think that's the way it's supposed to work. Okay?
Okay.
Yes, I see some heads. Andrew, I know you're leaving. Thank you for your time.
Peace.
Let's do this then. Let's take Maria DeRosa, because she was good enough to be stalled or something. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you
Right,
all. Have a
Dan,
good night.
Maria?
Thanks, Maria, for
Bye.
letting us take care of them.
Okay, Maria, you need to unmute yourself.
I am unmuted. Hi, Andrew. If you gotta go, This
Yeah,
is
good
nothing you
night.
don't know.
I'll catch
Have a good
you on the
night.
rerun. I'll make
You
sure to
got
watch
it.
this.
You
Good night.
got it. Tony, I just wanted to let you know that you were talking before about emergency preparedness. Last year when I was on the committee, Kelly Wenstrup and I sat down and we did an emergency preparedness flyer, and I believe it is still on the village's website. So you could take that and I guess use that as a starting point, or so you don't have to go back and reinvent it. Elsa remembers that she was kind enough to have it translated into Spanish for us
I
at the
remember
time.
too.
So yeah, if it's not on the village's website, then I'm happy to send it to you.
That would be so that's great information. Thank you. We're one step ahead already, or two steps.
Yes, it's
That's
construction.
great.
Yep.
Right. And I also wanted to comment on what exactly is the village doing in terms of emergency preparedness? Because I know the storm before Ida, there was a lot of things that they said they were going to do that didn't happen. For instance, the ambulance being up in Harbor Heights. We know during Ida, the 911 system failed miserably. There were people who were like on Facebook Live, standing on their kitchen tables with their children as the water was coming up and they could not get through. I know the high school is opened as an emergency shelter, which is great, but if you can't get to it, that's an issue. And these are things that the village has to figure out. And it can't be empty promises like putting an ambulance in the Heights that is not there. There were people who were literally rescued and left standing out in the storm all night long, 12, 13, 14 hours. My daughter was one of them. there needs to be points all over this village that are open for shelter in a case like that. And there needs to be a way to get people there when the water starts, because this happened quickly. This was not like, you know, oh gee, the water's coming up slowly and now I could, you know, evacuate and do what I need to do. This happened quick, and I don't want to put any of our emergency service personnel in danger, but the village needs to figure out whatever it is we need, boats, helicopters, you know, cars that are 187 feet off the ground. I don't know what it is that we need, army tanks, but there's got to be something, because that's not good. You can't have all the emergency service people located at the headquarters on Palmer Avenue if they can't get to any.
So what I think, Maria, I think your points are really very good, and I'm not speaking for the committee, but I am speaking as a part of the village family here. What the village manager did after Ida was to call the department heads together to come up with what worked well, they were short on, what they could do better. What was not there is the public. So I think this is a good segue into trying to help expand and better the plan, and make it available so people actually know what will happen. That's part of the reasons we're having river gauges with an early warning system to help in that regard. I think your points are well taken and very meaningful.
If
If
I
I
could jump
may,
in there, Dan, and amplify what Jerry has done is he's forming an Office of Emergency Management. We didn't have a planner, we didn't have an engineer, we didn't have a lot of things when Ida struck, and he is constructing a group that will do emergency planning specifically aimed at the items you're talking about. So those things were tackled, I believe, in the budget we just passed, and we'll address them going forward. And I trust Jerry to get that done.
Thank
And
you.
and yeah, and
I'm sorry, may I say something, please? Because I was
Go
trying to say something and Lou spoke over me. We put a memo together right after the storm when Maria was still on the committee, and there were 21 points that we sent to the village, and a number of the points that Maria just made were in that memo. I would still like to get some sort of response from the mayor, the board, and the manager's office and then in October, we added another 8 points. We are entitled to get answers to those questions that we as a committee put together, and they have been ignored.
all right, so Peg,
So put them together and I will reintroduce them to the board and get answers.
Peg,
Happy to do it.
Peg,
Because people are
can you-
coming to you for answers, so you should be able to answer a
It's
lot
on
of
my
these questions,
computer. I
especially
can
if you're
fill
gonna
it
hold
out
a
tonight.
meeting. It's right. Then that people aren't coming out screaming at the board, and they're not coming out screaming at meetings. They're coming to these meetings and hoping to get the answers from you guys. So that's where it should come from, because nobody else is answering.
Maria, I'm not clear. I'm not clear what you're saying. I'm sorry.
Now I'm saying, as Peggy said, we asked the questions, we're going on what, 9 months, 10 months ago,
Okay.
and they haven't been answered. And people are coming to this committee for answers. So
I appreciate that. I was, as a trustee liaison, I wasn't there 9 months ago.
no, you weren't, Dan. This is
So
pre
I'm
you.
unaware of it
You got
because
the
it never got
question.
to the board,
I'm sorry,
but it
you
will
were a
get to the
trustee,
board.
you got the questions. I will send them back out tonight
Thank you.
Okay, great.
to
Thank
the
you.
mayor
Peg.
and the board.
No, send
Doesn't
them,
make any difference. I will put it
send
on.
them to Dan.
And we will get
CC
an
us,
answer.
Peg, please.
Okay.
I'm sorry. That being said, my real question was, and I will keep this brief. Last month's meeting, you guys were talking. There was mention of work being done at the Short Street Bridge, or moving that bridge, or doing something to that bridge on the Beaver Swamp Brook. I would like to know what is going to happen with that, because that is upstream and we are downstream here. Myself, Elsa, We are the end of the line at that. Anything that's going to happen that makes that water upstream flow faster and quicker is going to literally annihilate everybody downstream from that, because there is a huge problem here. And the village manager is well aware of it. He came down and he saw it. There's a little footbridge. That opening is not wide enough to take on the amount of water. And the bigger problem is, I guess, the culvert that goes under Boston Post Road, because during Ida, we had 7 feet of water coming over Boston Post Road, not under it and through the river, but over it and into my yard. That if my house was moved over 7 inches, it would have been coming into my bedroom, like Niagara Falls. So it is a
Maria,
huge
I need to
issue.
ask a question here.
Yes, I
The,
do.
It was my understanding relatively recently that DEC came down and studied that area. Does anybody know whether that's true, not true?
I can tell you, Tony, that I'm unaware that the DEC is
Where
coming.
would DEC study that?
To the best of my knowledge, there's been no study.
All right, so Catherine Parker
I
said
do
she-
know, what I can tell you is that there has been requests for repairs of damage in that area under the, to FEMA. Was supposed to be included. I haven't read the FEMA document, so I can't tell you, but that's what we were told, that was in there.
All right, if Catherine Parker comes back on, can somebody, if you see her, I want to ask her this question, because I think she mentioned something to me about this. And the reason I'm bringing that up, Maria, is if they studied your area and we can look at it, at least it'd be a first step to see what their recommendations are. The other thing
There is a report for a study to go forward, which is the entire watershed of the Beaver Swamp Brook, but it did not qualify for certain grants. So it's something the village is going to be undertaking.
So is the study approved?
No, the study, what has to be worked out, again, it's one of the priority items, but it's not, we haven't gotten to it at this point. But yes, there needs to be a scope of work. There was a study that was done. I don't remember what I think.
The 80s, wasn't it, Dan?
I'm sorry.
I think it was in the 80s that there was a study done.
I think it was later than that, but it's still, it's old. It's not updated. And it was not as comprehensive as we needed it to be. And that before the Harrison filled the wetlands that was a big.
Project Home Run.
Yeah, that was bad.
Okay.
And also, with
So
the
in
silt
terms of
removal-
Short Street, nothing is going to happen quickly. When I say quickly, within 2 to 3 years. They're applying for grants. It's the town of Rise Bridge, not the village.
Right.
There's going to be coordination between the two.
Okay. And with the silt removal, how is that going to be done? Are they banking that, or are they doing it the right way? Because if you want to see the wrong way of doing it by banking it, just stand on the Barry Avenue Bridge at low tide and look towards Rye, and you can see what happened the last time Norm tried to bank the silt. It made it 100 times worse. So do we know how they're doing this?
And if I may, what are the exact points of dredging? Because I have not heard the final
We
list.
do not know yet.
That's why I haven't heard it. Okay.
The next points are going to be at Columbus Park. He told us that last night.
But Grove Street was begun.
Well, Grove Street was cleared for access for
Right.
the contractors.
Right.
I believe our crews will be going into Columbus Park.
Have we received permits for that? Don't we need
Jerry
permits?
says we're not doing anything without permits, so
Well, we can't.
there we go. But it's, the water there, I mean, the river there is like 3 inches deep. So there's so much silt there.
Well, yeah, I took you on that walk, if you recall.
Yeah. I saw a goose standing in the middle of the river. So.
Yeah, another point I wanted to mention, I think I sent an email on, is that oddly enough that what was it? you can't have a stormwater connection in Beaver Swamp and Harrison and Rye, but that isn't on the list in Mamaroneck. So they actually could technically do a stormwater connection without a permit in Mamaroneck part of Beaver Swamp, but not in the part of Harrison and Rye. And I sent,
You can't have a directed discharge to enter to any river, stream, or water body without speedies permit issued by the DEC.
okay, because it was, I even sent a link on it where it just mentions, Beaver Swamp and Harrison and Rye. But it does, if it was a county permit thing, I could recirculate that again if someone wants to take a
Okay,
look at it.
it's too vague for me to give you an answer to that.
Okay, I just thought it was kind of strange,
Again, I need to see it. If you could forward it to me, I'll be happy to give you an answer.
sure.
So just in the past, the 4 points were Grove Street, Columbus Park, the North Berry Extension Bridge, and Fenimore Road. Those were the past points for dredging.
The village in managers determination for the dredging is in areas that the Army Corps of Engineers is not going to be undertaken. At least that's what he has told everybody, and that's what he's told the board.
So then Columbus Park would be out.
And I believe what
We
they've done so far is not
don't know
dredging.
we don't know where they are because we don't have a map yet, and they're waiting. But they were going to start, if I recall correctly, down near was it Tompkins Avenue? I believe that's where they were. The first part of the dredging was supposed to start.
And what we're doing now is mostly debris removal.
Right.
We've
Yeah.
taken, like 30, 40 truckloads of stuff out of the river. So
Right.
we haven't done, to my knowledge, we haven't done a lot of dredging yet.
Right, and I think we really, I think we really need to be clear in the distinction between debris removal and dredging, because the debris removal blocks stream flow, just normal stream flow. Dredging is a whole different animal, and so I've seen them doing debris removal in several different locations for sure.
Dredging also, Tony, the 95 overpass is 2 bays blocked up.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I'd almost not even call that dredging, Peggy. It's so high there. It's not.
well, it's not debris removal, it's really dredging.
Yeah,
well,
and Jerry says that debris will have to be taken somewhere. It's not going to be banked. I mean,
Right.
some will be banked,
Good.
but that's not all what we're doing.
So if I may, one of the comments when we dredged last time and we put the spoils on the banks were not planted. So the spoils, every rainstorm would wash back into the river. So that might be something to be brought up with Jerry, is if we are leaving anything on the banks to make sure we cast them.
Yeah, I think there's another issue that we have to address on some of this, is that I think we need to somehow connect with the New York State Thruway Authority and the MTA, because obviously there's runoff from the train and there's runoff from the highway. So, and I think there has to be just some kind of communication open, so there could be some kind of study.
Maybe we should start a separate list as the committee of all of these sort of major, big ticket, non-Army Corps things, to make a checklist to send to the manager's office of things we think he should consider tackling.
So Peg and Stephen, on the back of today's agenda, I put together the Mamaroneck Holistic Watershed Flood Control Plan, draft outline for discussion only. And I'm going to hold it up. I know you can't see it. I know you can't see it. But if you go on the village web, I mean, I can send this to you.
Can you share screen?
Yeah, I probably
Because I
can.
think maybe that's another avenue we should be developing as a
All
committee.
right, let me see if I can let me open the document first.
And you know what, in addition to the 9 to 95, we should also put in the Hutch, because that water rolls its way down here.
So can you see this thing?
Yep, we can.
Oh, okay. So I started this, and after our meeting, one of our second St. Vito's meeting, a woman in the audience kind of,
AKA Lou Young's wife.
I didn't want to call her out, but whatever.
Oh, it's
So,
fine.
so, so I put this together with the idea that there are so many of these projects, and we all tend to get lost in the weeds. But I started with emergency preparedness, obviously, but and I put and my headings are what's the status, and then I have out here through the end of the year. So what I wanted to, you see that? You see your sheet there, Mrs. Young, or Miss, what's your name? I forgot your name, Deborah? You're muted.
Yes, it's Deborah. This is
Did-
great.
Okay, well, thank you. So what I'm thinking is that I'll start to fill out these boxes, but so in discussion, right? Proposed study, budget approved. I'm going to go through this, and for let's see, our last Maria, I am now going to add a line in here. Can I add a line? No, I can't in this one. But Short Street Bridge, everything is going to be on this list, and then we'll. And I think Dan, and I know Lou, you're on. I guess I can address you. I guess not sure what the protocol is here, but I know you guys are talking about these H&H studies. I think, and I'll try to have this ready in a week. But when you start to look at this, I think there's lots of places where we're going to need an H&H study, and I think maybe we could put them together and say, okay, let's get. Like, I don't know, let's get, more bang for our buck by hiring an engineer to do a couple of them if they're similar. I don't know. But at any rate, I had sent the PowerPoint around about the, temp pumps. And I know, Elsa, you responded to somebody's email and said they could speak tonight. That was about the lake at Columbus Park, correct, Elsa?
That was Greg Stern. He lives on behind the right next school.
So maybe being that you're really letting me do my thing here. So anyway, so I'm going to expand this, but I think this is a way we can start to get organized and we can show progress. Say, okay, how come we didn't do this? Okay, so let me show you one more document,
Let
and then
me just ask you a question. Can
yes,
this be put into a Google Doc that we can all share and we can add to?
That's a good idea.
Peggy, I do Google Docs at work under duress. What? Because what happens is you send your Google Doc out and you have formulas and stuff in there, you get it back, and someone's messed with your document, and now so yes, and
I don't think anybody here is going to mess with your Google Doc, in fairness.
There are no formulas here.
But I
Right,
think
no.
we can each add as we get ideas.
All right, I will. Right, and I learned this week you can put pictures in the Google Doc. So
Well, you'll have to teach us all.
I thought that, wow, I could have little pictures, little icons here. Wouldn't that be cool? So some of our audience is probably thinking I've lost my mind completely here, but yes, I will try a Google Doc so we can work on it together. So let me kill this thing for a minute. But thank you, Mrs. Young, for the idea. And I want to show you one other thing, and then we'll go back to our normal meeting stuff.
Tony, it's the footbridge, not the Short Street Bridge.
Oh, it's the footbridge?
It's the
Okay.
footbridge.
Oh, and how about helping us with the emergency preparedness? You sound like you're an expert.
I'm more than willing to help in any way I can. Just
Well,
That would be-
Maria,
let
if
me
you
know what
could,
you
can
need.
you send around the document that you prepared? It might be
Absolutely, we'll do that.
because that might have a ton of information in it.
Yeah,
All right, so now I'm going to go out on a limb or a branch over the river completely here. But this was the PowerPoint that I sent around several times. And, it's basically flooding, blah, blah, blah. Let me see if I can forward. And this was my plan, right? And then this was detail on the plan. And this is so this is you know, so the Army Corps is proposing the tunnel, right? I'm suggesting the options, right? An open channel, a lake, pumps, right? So this is this was Irene, right? Whoops, let me go back. Yep, Irene, what did I have here? So this is our ugly parking lot. This is downtown Yonkers, Larkin Plaza, right? So the Sawmill River was under their parking lot. This is what they did. They built a dam, right? So we want to get some of Steve Otis's $250 million. I want this to look like this, but this is Tony Gelber. Here's my lake in Columbus Park. Here's my pumps. There's my pumps. I went down to Florida to see the pump company. These are the pumps from New Orleans. They put 40 of these 60,000 GPM pumps in. This is all my pump flow calculations. This is the water being pumped out of I think it's the canal in New Orleans. Here's where my pump location is. One of them sucks the water and then pushes it under the bridges. Here's another possible location out here, blah, blah, blah. My vision for housing. This is Plaza Street. Okay. Oh, and then one other thing, and then I'm going to stop. River access. This is, I want to speak to our committee for the environment, because I think we have to start to get our rivers to be more friendly for us. Housing. Oh, here's another idea. So trustees. Oh, darn. How expensive could a bridge like this be, right? The Army Corps is talking about taking out the bridges in Columbus Park. Let's put something like this in. I don't know. I don't know why this thing keeps flipping on me, but here, this is another thing I want to talk about. The transformer next to the old A&P is below grade, right? It floods every single time. This is green infrastructure, one of my favorites. Steve, this is your flood proofing thing. Oh, this is the stuff I did at Pratt, which I didn't finish this other thing. River access. Okay. I think this video, this thing, oh, here's our famous river blockages, right? All right, I don't know. I'm looking for something particular here. So there's other flood proofing barriers that I want. Oh, there they are. Hang on. And then I'm done. Okay. So trustees, these are flood-proofing barriers. You fill them with water. They surround lakes with them. I think this has to be under emergency preparedness. So other than that, I'm stopping.
Tony, how tall are those?
Some of these are like you can get them 6 feet tall. They have them where they go completely like around a lake.
So can I get one that's 10 feet tall and put it around my
I don't
house?
know. We
Me
can check it
too.
out. Do
I
I get a
want one
commission if
too.
I find one?
Yes, I commissioned you to buy it.
And I talked to the pump company. They came out and looked at the pumps in Columbus Park. They're now FEMA is leasing pumps for Puerto Rico, leasing, and FEMA's paying for it. Okay, enough.
Okay,
Okay, so let's get back to no, that's not what we're trying to get back to. Back to the meeting. Oh, all right.
Tony, before we run out, I want to make sure we at least have a discussion about what's going on Mamaroneck Avenue in Harrison, because I think that's.
Yes, okay. So, I think I know how to do this. All right.
Just-
Okay, so thank you for bearing with me. And maybe at the next meeting, we could flush out some of these ideas and get a recommendation memo to the board. Lou, you look bored.
No, I'm not bored.
Okay, let's go.
I've seen all this before.
Oh,
so,
true.
I
That's
didn't
right.
feel it
So you are bored. I got to get some more stuff for you.
I love everything you've done, Tony. I love it all.
Thank you. All right, let's do item 4. Communication and cooperation with municipalities in our watersheds. So,
Tony, can you unshare screen?
unshare. Sure, I'll try.
Maybe not.
All right, hang on one second.
Yep.
All right, so Peggy and I had an informal discussion with the potential flood committee in Harrison, and we discussed kind of two items fundamentally. One was the road to nowhere and where's Harrison's head on it, and the second was the development north of the
Dam.
waterworks, right?
Yep.
So a couple of things, and Peggy, just chime in here if you don't mind. The flood committee in Harrison is not a formal flood committee yet. So, but they're saying, and we've heard this before, that Harrison is now getting flooded. So all of a sudden flooding, they are interested in flooding. So the people we spoke to felt, and I'm sorry, I can't remember their names. What are their names, Peg?
Their names
Oh.
are Rob Fliger and Alexis DeMarco, but Alexis is moving out of the community, so
Right. So they felt
they were the two
positive.
co-chairs.
Right. They felt positive that they're going to be moving in kind of a more cooperative direction, right? When we spoke about the road to nowhere, I think, and Peggy again, correct me, but it seems like the study again is an old study and nobody believes it. And I guess the engineer who did it,
Hydrologist who did it.
hydrologist maybe didn't do the best job in the world. I don't know that for a fact, but it's another area that I think Dan and Lou, it might be, we might need a new H&H study to say, okay,
So let me jump in if you don't
go
mind.
ahead.
Okay, so we met with Alexis and with Rob, and Catherine Parker also said the best way to get county money is if we can do an intermunicipal project. The road to nowhere is affecting both Mamaroneck and Harrison at this point. So we were going to propose from our committee and from Harrison was to do a joint project between the village of Mamaroneck and the town of Harrison, whereby we would hire a hydrologist to study what would be the benefit of taking out or trimming back, excuse me, the road to nowhere. B, what would be the cost. B, what would be the benefit of going 350 or whatever number of feet downstream channelizing? What kind of benefit would we see? And then if those two projects can be done, then to thirdly afterwards, because we want to work from downstream to upstream, tackle the Winfield Avenue Bridge, which is serving no purpose and is also blocking water. So what we would like to propose from both the Flood Committee of Mamaroneck and the Flood Committee of Harrison is that we do this together with Harrison. Hire the engineer, hydrologist, and get this project moving. Is that right, Tony?
Yeah, and I think to use maybe Dan's words from before to determine, the cost benefits of this area and with recommendations and costs to go forward. I think that we've been spinning our wheels on this thing for a long time, and I'm not blaming anybody about it, but when I was on the committee the last time 5 years ago, we were talking about the same thing, and it seems like, and we were on the road to nowhere with the mayor of Harrison, and his statement at the time, and I won't quote him exactly, but he's like, if I take this bridge out and then somebody else floods downstream, and it's like New Orleans, I solve my problem by pushing the water downstream. So he fears that that's going to happen there, and then he's going to get blamed. So I think a good H&H study to determine costs and benefits in this area is the next step. So Dan, what do you think here?
Well, I think that a joint application to the county is worthwhile and very meaningful. And it's relatively low hanging fruit, excuse me, and can be done. The county has money, and the money has not totally been spent in a year, the last couple of years, from what I understand.
It's never been touched, according to Catherine.
the thing is, will the county help us do a study?
That's all part of of doing it. I.e., you need a scope of work to do something and then take action. And that's part, so there's a,
If I'm not mistaken, it's a 50-50. 50% from the county, and then it would be 25% from Harrison, 25% from Amerenik.
Okay, so.
So should we then write a memo?
Right, so Dan, in the interest of moving forward, and I need to fill out some boxes on my checklist here, this thing, I got this by my bed, now. Trying to
So
have a
Tony,
little.
I sent a note to you recapping the meeting, didn't I? On
Sometimes I
Saturday or
ignore your
Sunday?
memos, Peg.
Thank you. I think on Sunday I sent you one, so why don't you have a look at it?
All right.
And if you agree with it, send it around to the committee and let's make sure everybody's okay with it. If they are, then let's send a copy to Robin, to Alexis, and tell them this is what we're going to propose to our board. We'd like them to propose it to their board.
All right, I'll ask for their comments. All right, I think that's a good idea. Okay, cool. All right.
I think there's some hands raised too, if I'm not
All right.
mistaken.
Can we take a 5-minute break?
your time is getting late, so
Yeah,
what you need to do.
I'd rather continue if you don't mind, because I
All right, so
I'm
all right,
thinking-
so
I'm not-
let's.
Are there any
let's-
hands
Wrap
raised?
it up.
All right, yeah. All right, so let me just look at the. Okay, let's do this. And I'm going to set my timer. We have 2 5-minute questions, and then that'll be the meeting,
Do
okay?
we have any hands raised? Am I making that up?
Yes, Greg has his hand up and
Right, and I thought it would be good because he did send an email, and Elsa was good enough to respond to him, so.
okay,
Yes.
Greg, you're on.
Okay, thanks. I'll be real quick. So it was just, I have over the years thought of a whole bunch of ideas along with the Army Corps project. And obviously, some would cost money, some wouldn't, but one minor / maybe major one that I thought could be really good for everything and not really cost anything would be that second ancillary parking lot at the train station that's over the bridge, that's adjacent to Columbus Park where the basketball courts are, would be something maybe to eliminate. And with the new parking garage in Harrison that will probably never be filled to capacity, work with Harrison to offer the number of spots that would be lost in Amerenik to be in Harrison. And I know for me, where I live, like part of our property is on in Harrison, so that would be a natural go-to point to go to Harrison instead of Amerenik. And then with the elimination of that parking lot, it's a small spot, but it could be growth. It could work in the trapezoidal area that the Army Corps proposed. More trees could be put down, and it would lessen traffic in that already congested area with kind of minimal disruption, for the area and with the project. So I thought that was something that might be worthwhile, especially with the new garage that was just built right up the road.
So Greg, I'm calling that Confluence Park and Lake.
Yep.
Yeah, we are going to try with the Army Corps. Right now they have a tunnel, and as you heard or may have heard at the meeting the other night, that's not part of the first phase of the project.
Right.
So we're going to push to review that again and just see if we can do anything. And I'm not promising anything out.
Oh yeah, no, it's just one of those.
We
And I
also-
know.
Sorry,
Oh.
we also as a committee sent a number of questions to the Corps 3 times actually, and one of them was, would it be better to make an open culvert rather than a closed
A stream,
potentially
really.
collecting
Right.
tunnel, and that might be able to somehow be linked.
Yeah.
Yeah, one
it's-
point that,
And I know the Corps said that really on their end, nothing can be really changed unless it's minor. So yeah, I thought this was just a minor thing, and it would just make better use of Harrison. And I don't know, it's just one of those multi district, multi municipality things that the county might like and might like to see the collaboration and I think benefit both
Thinking out of
sides.
the box, it's very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, one point
Oh,
I do
I
want,
like the idea.
one point I do want to mention is that, if you go to the train now, there isn't a heck of a lot of cars in the train parking lot. And I think that's
Right.
actually a change that's going to be for the long term, not for the short term. I mean, I'm taking
Yeah.
me for an instance, I've gone in a half a dozen times to work in the city, since COVID. So I think,
Right.
we don't even need the parking lot anymore.
Well, but as time goes on, we probably
Yeah.
need it more and more.
I don't think it's gonna change, like, if you just hear what people say, people aren't coming back.
Yeah.
And
And
that small parking lot that holds 25 cars isn't,
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna be needed.
Yeah, and that was and that because I had talked when the building in Harrison opened, I was there for the opening because my kids love the trains. We're there all the time, and they were saying that it's going to be at least 5 years before it would even be half capacity. So if it's only 25 cars, there might be Mamaroneck residents, village residents that would rather go to Harrison, and it would make more sense for everybody.
Can I ask one question, and you may or may not know this? Is it the
Yeah.
same price for a monthly pass from Harrison as it is from Mamaroneck?
Yes.
No, it's a little different, and they do it a different way too. I used to live there, so I don't know what
So that might be something we'd have to kind of try to
Cars
work
on
with
one.
the MTA.
The train pass is the same price.
Yeah, the
Peggy.
train pass. Oh, yeah, the train
Oh,
pass is
okay.
the same. Yeah,
I'm
parking's
sorry,
a little
that's what I was
different.
asking. It's been a long time since I've commuted by train.
Yeah, me too. But I think that would be a minor thing to work out, whether how to split it or how to work it out. But that would be.
Yeah,
I think those would be easy to work out.
yeah, I think one thing that might be more important actually is using that parking lot for the flood parking.
Well, that
The
too.
flo-
Yeah.
The flood
Yeah.
warning parking, if we could, if everybody's in low, if anybody's who's in low areas, I mean, that's a big parking lot for cars to maybe go into.
Idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it wasn't built yet. It wasn't finished during Ida, so it could be a new element to bring up, that now we have this big structure that could hold hundreds of
The
cars.
problem is how you get your car there and then how do you get home?
Yeah, well, if it's an early warning, like I think the one thing the village did earlier was that when they knew something was coming, they said some of the higher ground would be open and free. It could be like that. We know it's coming. You can go park your car and not worry about it. So it would be like a pre-warning.
Thank you very much, Greg.
Yep, you're welcome. All right, took up too much time.
have a
Enjoy.
good one.
Thanks everybody.
One more, Dan, please.
Go ahead. That would be Maria. It's the only other hand. So go ahead, Maria.
She
You
may
need to
be,
unmute yourself.
maybe she's still on from before.
But allegedly she's still here. Maria, do you want to talk or not? If you do, unmute yourself. Otherwise, we're done.
How about Daniela? Let Daniela Camarda.
No, I think that was just Bernie's.
Oh, okay.
Was
about
there
a
anything
motion?
else? Was there anything else that we really needed to get to from the minutes?
I didn't do minutes.
I mean, but not well, we didn't do minutes from the last
yeah,
meeting, either. We need
agenda.
to do that. But was there anything else that we needed to get to on our
The Army
agenda?
Corps, the only comment on the Army Corps was thank you. And, there are 4 phases. The first phase is the Ward Avenue Bridge.
I thought the first phase was Ward Avenue up to Columbus Avenue. Columbus
That's
Park.
Ward Avenue Bridge.
Just the bridge, I
Just
think.
the bridge?
Yeah.
It's the
Just
first
the bridge.
phase all the way up to the
Right.
confluence?
And I sent a memo today to Bethany asking to confirm whether they're sending an H&H engineer out. And I am getting them more flood marks, so yeah.
Okay.
All right, motion to finish this meeting, please.
Peggy?
One.
No, Tony, we don't have minutes from the last
No
meeting?
minutes, no.
So do we need to ask Dana to do that? she
We'll
can do
talk
it on the
offline
video.
about that.
Yeah.
Who's
'cause she
gonna
can do it.
take the minutes for tonight?
I'll do the minutes. I've been doing them pretty much because, yeah.
Okay, you need a second to the to
Second
adjourn.
motion, second to close the meeting.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Enjoy. Have a
Thank
good
you,
evening.
public. Have a good evening, everybody.
Good night.
Adios.